reason for this is both that freedom is in and of itself good, valuable, worthwhile, essential to being human, and because if people have freedom, then each of us can act on our own to do the things that will maximize our welfare, and no one has to decide on our behalf. The way to maximize freedom is to maximize choice. The more choice people have, the more freedom they have, and the more freedom they have, the more welfare they have. This, I think, is so deeply embedded in the water supply that it wouldn't occur to anyone to question it. And it's also deeply embedded in our lives. I'll give you some examples of what modern progress has made possible for us. This is my supermarket, not such a big one. I want to say just a word about salad dressing. 175 salad dressings in my supermarket. If you don't count
Yeah, it's been said that you should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're really busy, then you should meditate for an hour a day.
Yeah, I love that. That's why, by the way, that's why I meditate for 2 hours a day.
Yeah. So look, I mean, information is what opens that door. I mean, if you think that your thoughts have something to do with your future, just from a theoretical standpoint, that your thoughts create your destiny, and you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before, well, then your life isn't going to change very much as long as you're thinking the same way. And those same thoughts lead to the same choices. The same choices lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the exact same experiences, and we anticipate the same feelings or emotions from those experiences, and those emotions are the payoff that drive our very same thoughts. Well, our biology, our neurocircuitry, our neurochemistry.
On the morning of Saturday, November 18th, 1961, a 23-year-old man named Michael Rockefeller reached down and grabbed the pull cord that was connected to the outboard motor that was on the boat that Michael was riding in. And Michael, he pulled and pulled on that cord, but he could not get this engine to restart. It just sputtered and wouldn't turn over. And without power, that meant that Michael and his small crew just continued to drift farther and farther out to sea. But that wasn't even the worst of this situation. The boat that Michael and his crew were on, which was a 40-foot long catamaran, it was 2 handcrafted canoes tied together, well, it was starting to sink. Minutes before, Michael and his crew had been happily traveling along the beautiful green jungled coast of New Guinea when they had to cross over this area where the water was particularly turbulent. There was this river in New Guinea that was feeding out to the Arafura Sea, which is where Michael and his crew were, and where the
at the end, but it really is interesting that the show ended from the perspective that Martha was introduced as. Now, like I said, one thing I love about the show is it portrays pretty much all the characters in a very human way. Donnie is the main character, is the protagonist, but still he's an incredibly flawed person and even somewhat selfish. And Martha is the main antagonist. She's this obsessive stalker, but there are moments where you see that she's just a damaged woman, and she's obviously gone through so much trauma that isn't explained in the show, and she feels like she can escape some of that trauma by finding a companion in her life, which she chooses to be Donnie, not really understanding until she sat there in a courtroom that what she's done is just so obsessive. And keep in mind as well, in the show, Martha has actually had previous convictions for stalking, which he actually finds out by just searching her name online. So Donnie is not the first victim that Martha's had. This is obviously a pattern of behavior she's had. She's a damaged person. I think the only exception to that rule is Dorian, because Dorian is in the show so
First of all, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Long time coming. I'm glad we're doing it in person and not remotely. And I think what I want to do is start with your origin story, because you're your path is very unlikely. Your path to becoming a scientist, and I think it actually also kind of contextualizes some of the things that I want to talk about with you today. So maybe start there.
Sure. So on the one hand, maybe I was fated to become a scientist. I guess the two things that are relevant there are, I always loved animals, and I've always been obsessed with animal behavior. Like, just could watch Cousteau shows growing up, underwater life or animals hunting, animals doing anything is just so fascinating to me, because I think even at a really young age, I've always just been intrigued in sort of what drives different animals to behave in the way they do, and how body form matches to